When my ex cheated and told me I'd never find someone like her, I was devastated. But life had a twist in store, a chance encounter with a model who'd secretly had a crush on me for years. Just when I thought I'd moved on, an unexpected message from my ex turned everything upside down. Have you ever been told you'd never find someone better? Those words, they sting, don't they? They bury themselves deep, whispering doubts when you're alone. Well, I've been there. My ex cheated on me and with this cold, biting smirk told me I'd never find someone like her. At the time, I believed it, but life has a funny way of proving people wrong, because as it turns out, I ended up with someone way out of her league, a model no less. And the craziest part, she'd had a crush on me since high school. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This story isn't just about getting even. It's about how betrayal can break you and how sometimes when the dust settles, you find something even better waiting on the other side. It all began around 2 years ago. I was 33, single, and like many of us, hoping to find someone real. Not a fling, not another situationship, but a genuine connection. That's when I met Chloe. We matched on a dating app, the kind that markets itself as serious and relationship-oriented. From the very first message, things felt different. We'd chat for hours, laughing at the same jokes, sharing the same quirky interests. It felt like I'd finally found someone who saw the world the way I did. And when we finally met in person, she was everything I expected. Breathtakingly beautiful, yes, but also warm, engaging. She made me feel like I was the only person in the room. For a while I thought I was living in a dream, but as with all dreams, reality has a way of creeping in. You see, there were signs. Small things I brushed off because I didn't want to shatter the illusion. The way she talked about other men hitting on her, the sly smile when she mentioned how she could have any guy she wanted. It seemed playful at the time, cute even, but now, looking back, those weren't jokes, they were clues, little breadcrumbs leading to a truth I wasn't ready to face. And when that truth finally surfaced, it didn't just shake my world, it completely turned it upside down. But before we get to that, let me take you back to where it all began. Because sometimes the beginning holds the key to understanding how things went so terribly wrong. When Chloe and I first met, everything felt effortless. I'd been on a few dates through the app before, but nothing ever really stuck. Conversations would fizzle out or we'd meet up, and the spark just wouldn't be there. But with Chloe, it was different. We could talk for hours, losing track of time until the early morning. She had this way of making even the most mundane stories feel interesting, like she was letting me into a world only she could see. She'd tell me about her childhood, her dreams, the places she wanted to travel, and I'd listen, hanging on to every word. Our first date felt like something out of a movie. She showed up in this simple, flowy dress. Nothing over the top, but she still managed to turn heads. I remember thinking, there's no way this is real. But it was, and for a while I let myself believe I'd found something rare, something solid. We fell into a rhythm. Movie nights on Fridays, lazy brunches on Sundays. Our friends started merging, and soon it felt like we were building a life together. She even started leaving little things at my place: a toothbrush, a sweater, a pair of slippers. Each item felt like a promise, a step toward a future I thought we both wanted. But even then there were cracks. Tiny ones, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. She'd occasionally mention an ex, not in a way that suggested she missed him, but more like she wanted me to know how desirable she was. Or she'd drop hints about guys at her work who flirted with her, laughing as if it was nothing. And then there were the social media interactions, guys who would comment on her photos, leaving little heart emojis or bold compliments. At first I shrugged it off. She couldn't control what people said online, right? But the way she responded, the playful winks, the haha stop it replies, it gnawed at me. I told myself it was harmless, that maybe she was just being honest. But deep down I think I knew. There was a part of her that craved attention, something I couldn't fully satisfy, and that thought terrified me. Still, I pushed those thoughts away. I wanted this to work. I needed it to. And as those little warning signs piled up, I buried them beneath the weight of my own hope. Because when you want something to be true, it's amazing how easily you can convince yourself it is. For a while things seemed normal. Maybe not perfect, but good enough. Chloe and I settled into our routines, and I thought the little doubts I'd had were behind me. But then, slowly, things started to shift. At first it was subtle. She'd get home from work later than usual. 6 o'clock turned into 7, then 8, and sometimes even 9. Her reasons were always vague. Got caught up at work, met a friend for coffee, just needed some air. Nothing concrete, nothing specific. I tried not to push. I didn't want to be the paranoid boyfriend, the guy who checks his partner's phone or questions every move, but the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. I'd ask her casually, "How was your day?" hoping she'd fill in the gaps. But her answers became shorter, more guarded. And then the defensiveness started. If I asked why she was late, she'd snap. "Why are you keeping tabs on me? Can't I have my own life?" It was like I'd touched a raw nerve, and every question felt like stepping on a landmine. One night we were having dinner. Take out on the couch, something we used to love. I mentioned that I'd run into one of her co-workers earlier that day. She froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "Oh? What did they say?" "Just asked how you were. Said you left work early." Her face shifted. The mask slipped just for a second, and then it was back. "Yeah, I had an appointment, I told you, remember?" She hadn't. I knew she hadn't. But I nodded anyway. I didn't have the energy to fight. After that, the late nights became more frequent. She'd slip into bed hours after me, her phone clutched tight in her hand. I'd hear the soft click of her screen turning off as I pretended to be asleep. It wasn't long before my imagination started filling in the blanks. I pictured her with someone else, laughing, sharing secrets, being the Chloe I used to know, but with another man. The thought was like poison. It seeped into everything, turning my love for her into something sharp and dangerous. I needed to know the truth. I couldn't live in the shadows of my own doubts any longer. But I also knew I wasn't going to get the truth from her, not willingly. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. It felt ridiculous, like something out of a bad movie. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed proof. Solid, undeniable proof. Because if I was wrong, I needed to know. And if I was right, well, I needed to know that too. The investigator was a no-nonsense kind of guy. He didn't judge. Me didn't make me feel like I was losing my mind. He just took the details, where she worked, her schedule, the excuses she gave, and said he'd handle the rest. And then all I could do was wait. Those 10 days were the longest of my life. Every minute felt like an hour, every hour an eternity. Chloe kept up her routine, still coming home late, still offering empty explanations. And all the while I was waiting for that phone call, the one that would either set my mind at ease or shatter everything. When the call finally came, I almost didn't answer. My hands were shaking, my breath felt stuck in my throat. "Are you ready for this?" the investigator asked. I wasn't, but I said yes anyway. And in that moment, everything changed. When I walked into the investigator's office, my mind was already racing. I had spent the past 10 days in a state of limbo, waiting, wondering, half hoping I was wrong, half terrified I was right. The investigator sat behind a worn wooden desk, a manila envelope resting on top like a loaded gun. He didn't waste time. "Your suspicions were correct," he said, his voice steady, almost clinical. I sat down, the chair creaking under my weight. "Tell me everything." And he did. Chloe had been meeting with someone, a man named Cody. Not once, not twice, but several times over the past week. The investigator had followed her, capturing every moment through his camera lens. He slid the photos across the desk, and I forced myself to look. There they were. Chloe and Cody standing outside an apartment building, laughing, holding hands, kissing. Each photo felt like a punch to the gut. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the casualness of it. The way she smiled, the way she leaned into him, as if our life together meant nothing. The investigator kept talking, detailing times, places, but his voice became background noise. My mind was stuck on those images. I had been living in a lie, and now the truth was staring back at me in full color. When I got home, Chloe was already there. She sat on the couch, her feet tucked under her, scrolling through her phone like it was just another ordinary evening. I didn't waste time. "We need to talk." She looked up, her expression shifting from surprise to annoyance. "What now?" "I know." Her phone slipped from her hand, landing on the couch with a soft thud. "What are you talking about?" "I know about Cody. I know where you've been going. I know everything." Silence. She didn't deny it, didn't rush to defend herself. Instead, she sat there staring at me, her face a perfect mask. And then she laughed. It wasn't a nervous giggle or a laugh of relief. It was sharp, bitter, like a weapon. "So what? You hire a private eye and now you think you know me?" Her words cut deeper than the photos ever could. There was no regret, no apology, just defiance. "Do you even care?" I asked. "Did you ever?" She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic. It was just a bit of fun. You're really going to throw everything away over this?" She stood up, folding her arms across her chest. "Let's be real. You've always known I was out of your league. You should be grateful I even stayed this long." In that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about cheating. This was about control. She had always believed I needed her more than she needed me. She thought I would endure anything just to keep her, but she was wrong. I took a deep breath, the weight of years of doubt and insecurity lifting from my shoulders. "You're right," I said. "You are out of my league, but not in the way you think." And then I walked out. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't look back. I just left. As the door closed behind me, I felt the first sliver of freedom. I had spent so long questioning myself, twisting myself into knots to keep her happy. But now the chains were gone. And while I didn't know what the future held, I knew one thing for certain. I would never let anyone make me feel like that again. Walking away from Chloe felt like stepping off a cliff. I had no idea where I'd land, if I'd land at all. The weeks that followed were a blur of empty takeout boxes and sleepless nights. I moved into a small apartment, a temporary space. That felt more like a waiting room than a home. Everywhere I looked, I saw echoes of my old life. Her song on the radio, a restaurant we used to love, even just passing couples on the street. It all felt like a reminder of what I had lost, or maybe what I had escaped. But life has a way of pushing you forward, even when you want to stand still. A few months after the breakup, I got an invite to my 15-year high school reunion. At first, I didn't want to go. The idea of smiling and pretending everything was fine seemed impossible. But my friends insisted, and eventually I gave in. I'm glad I did. The reunion was a strange mix of nostalgia and new beginnings. Old friends, familiar faces, all of us older, a little worn around the edges, but still connected by the invisible thread of shared memories. And then there was Veronica. Back in high school, Veronica was one of those girls who seemed effortlessly cool. She was smart, funny, and had this natural beauty that didn't need makeup or fancy clothes to shine. We were friendly, but our paths never really crossed beyond a few shared classes. What I didn't know was that Veronica had a secret. As I was catching up with her best friend, she leaned in close, a mischievous smile on her face. "You know, Veronica had the biggest crush on you back then." I laughed. It seemed absurd. A model, yes, Veronica had gone on to become a successful model, having a crush on me. But the more her friend insisted, the more real it began to feel. I decided to take a chance. I found Veronica on social media and sent her a simple message. "Hey, it's been a while. How have you been?" I didn't expect much. Maybe a polite response, a bit of small talk, but what I got was so much more. She responded quickly, her messages filled with warmth and curiosity. We started talking. Really. Talking. About high school, about where life had taken us, about the things we wished we had said back then. Soon our chats became daily. Texts turned into phone calls, and phone calls turned into long video chats that stretched late into the night. She was in Brussels for a photo shoot, but it felt like she was right there with me. One night, as we laughed about something silly, I realized I was smiling, genuinely smiling, for the first time in months. She made me feel seen, heard, valued. It was nothing like what I had with Chloe. There were no games, no power plays, just an honest connection. After a few weeks, Veronica suggested I visit her in Brussels. The idea both excited and terrified me. It felt too soon, too much, but I couldn't ignore the pull I felt toward her. So I booked a flight. When I arrived, she was waiting at the airport, her face lighting up when she saw me. It was surreal, like stepping into a dream I didn't know I had. We spent days exploring the city, sharing stories, creating new memories, and with every moment, I felt the weight of my past slipping away. Veronica wasn't just a distraction. She was a reminder that life goes on, that love, real love, is still possible. And as our time in Brussels drew to a close, I knew I wasn't just visiting, I was starting over. As I flew back home from Brussels, my mind raced with possibilities. For the first time in a long time, my future felt like an open road rather than a dead-end street. Veronica and I kept in touch every day, and it didn't take long before we officially called it what it was, a relationship. Being with her was like breathing fresh air. There were no hidden agendas, no subtle manipulations, just honesty and warmth. I found myself laughing more, living more. The shadows Chloe left behind were fading, replaced by the light Veronica brought into my life. But life has a funny way of testing you, even when you think you've moved on. One afternoon, while scrolling through Instagram, I decided to share a few photos from my trip. I posted them on my close friend's story, not realizing Chloe was still on that list. I hadn't thought about her in months, but there she was, lurking in the digital corners of my life. Her message popped up a few hours later. "Who's that? Why are you playing groupie?" It was the same old Chloe, snarky, dismissive, still trying to keep me under her thumb. I responded with a simple truth. "That's my girlfriend." There was a pause, the little typing indicator flashing, then disappearing. Finally, she sent, "Sure." That one word dripped with bitterness. It was as if, even now, she couldn't accept that I had moved on, that I had found happiness without her. For a moment, I considered ignoring her, but then I remembered her last words to me, that I'd never find someone like her. So I typed, "You were right. I found someone. Better." And then I blocked her. For good this time. It wasn't about revenge, it was about closure. I needed to close that chapter of my life completely, to make room for the new one I was building with Veronica. Looking back, I realized Chloe did me a favor. Her betrayal pushed me out of a toxic cycle and into a life I never thought possible. She was right. I'd never find someone like her again. And thank God for that, because sometimes the best thing that can happen is losing what you thought you wanted, only to find exactly what you needed. And if you're watching this wondering if better days are ahead, trust me, they are. You just need to take that first step into the unknown. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life stories that prove life's plot twists are always worth sticking around for.